Yeah, we are going to talk about something that is so important, and we've got some smart people that are going to help us with it. On our live line, we are pleased to have Suzanne Gordon, who is author, Wounds of War co-editor, The Culture and Politics of Healthcare Work Senior Policy Fellow, Veterans Healthcare Policy Institute. How are you, Suzanne?
I'm fine, Cliff. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Also, we have Skip Pelano, who is an Army Vietnam veteran. He was with the 101st Airborne and a member of VFP, Veterans for Peace, and established SOVA, S-O-V-A, Save Our VA Healthcare Action Committee. And that's saying a lot, Skip. I know exactly where you're coming from. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm great. Thank you so much, Cliff. Glad to be here.
And thank you so much for your service. Have to tell you that, okay? This is a very interesting thing. The VA privatization. This DC meeting with lawmakers, union reps, veterans, healthcare workers. What can you tell us about that, Suzanne?
Well, last week, thanks to Skip and Delano and his group, the Save Our VA Committee of Veterans for Peace, VHPI and SOVA participated in a 3-day retreat and lobbying effort on the Hill and met with a variety of legislators, mostly in Congress, including the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, Mark Takano. And we were there talking about one of the biggest themes was the failure of the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Robert Wilkie, to fill something like between 49 and 55,000 vacancies at the VA, most of them at the Veterans Health Administration. And we talked a lot about Wilkie's unwillingness to do what he's statutorily required to do, which is fill these vacancies, and asked members of Congress what they are going to do concretely, to force him to do that, because he's said several times that it's not a big priority for him. And we think it's not a priority because if you don't fill vacancies, then there's delays, and then people can't get appointments, and then it justifies sending them to the private sector, and then you take money out of the VA budget, and you basically have an excuse to privatize the VA. And I think Skip can talk more from the point of view not only of someone who's active in this, but also, Skip uses the VA. And Skip, was very eloquent in describing, the difference that he experienced having had private sector care for a long time with the VA, which I'm sure he'd be happy to share.
Yeah, I want Skip to do that. Before that, though, Suzanne, I want to mention the fact that you have spent 3 decades reporting on healthcare programs, workers, and policy, and you've authored or edited 21 books.
I have, yes.
And a journalist whose work has appeared in, you name it, she's been there, the Washington Post, New York Times. She's also, I could go on and on and on. So, and then she's also the author of Wounds of War, How the VA Delivers Health, Healing, and Hopes of the Nation's Veterans. I just want to make sure everybody understands how great you have been relative to getting all the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you.
Right. Skip, go right ahead, please.
Well, actually a good place to start, Cliff, is just to say that VA healthcare is world-class healthcare, and a lot of people have been misled by people who have been out to attack the VA, especially since 2014 when there was a scandal out in the Phoenix VA where people kind of made up some lies about, veterans being cared for. But, once the VA recognized this problem, they very quickly resolved it, and no longer do you have to wait long at the VA. I mean, everybody at any hospital has to wait sometimes, but in general, the VA has improved its record, has done away with wait time, and veterans generally get better service there than in the private sector where they have longer waits and so on. But again, people have been out to attack the VA because many of them have an idea that the VA system is somehow broken. They want to spread this propaganda all over the country when, in fact, like I said, the VA has a world-class system of health care provided to 9 million veterans. And again, there are plenty of documents out there that attest to this. It's not just my testimony. But again, anyone who goes online can find plenty of evidence from the RAND Corporation and such other independent groups studying VA healthcare to affirm what I'm saying. But again, a lot of these groups that are out to undermine the VA don't like Medicare, they don't like Medicaid, they don't like Obamacare. They want all these things to be dismantled. They don't want the government to provide anything to the people. And again, the VA is fantastic. And what's happening right now is that this effort to undermine the VA is actually being led by Robert Wilkie, the head, the secretary of the VA. And again, you'd think he'd be the most strong proponent of VA healthcare, but in fact, from the inside, he's trying to undermine it and send millions of veterans out to the private sector instead of strengthening and fully funding and fully staffed, like Suzanne just mentioned, so that it's undermined from within. And again, this is something that's trying to do away with the VA so that 9 million veterans would be sent out to the private sector rather than, again, strengthen the VA and make it an institution that serves us far into the future. They're not going to do away with veterans anytime soon, most likely, and we'll need it. And it's special. It serves veterans in a very special way, and we want to keep it that way.
Well, Skip, let me tell you, the VA here that serves our veterans here in Chicago, in Northern Illinois, they do a great job. So
that's great to hear.
Yeah, they really are. They come in, they tell us what we need to know. We go over there, and they really do great. So, what you're saying, tell us why. Now you've got.
Well, again, I think the one thing that veterans have to do, like yourself, have to go out and tell other people because there are organized groups out there trying to undermine the VA. One of the far right Koch brothers network, billionaires who have this whole network to undermine these services provided by the government to people who need those services, like the VA or Medicare. That these are groups that don't want the government to provide these services to us. If we don't speak out, through our political leaders and to vet. I know lots of vets I see when I go to the VA aren't unaware of what's going on with the VA, and they don't think it's something real. But again, the evidence is, in what's happening with the VA and so many veterans being sent outside. And if we don't stand up as veterans and say this is a great system we have and educate, other people in the public to what's going on, we're going to lose something that's so valuable to so many of us like you and I.
Absolutely.
Well, and I also think that there's a lot of veterans, I guess of all ages, who, they go to the VA and, I don't know, some clerk, got up on the wrong side of the bed that day and isn't exactly perfectly cordial, and they get really angry, and it's like, they get mad, and I'm never going back there again. And there's some kind of assumption that never happens in the private sector. And, I mean, in the private sector, people get mistreated all the time, and you can't go to your congressman and complain, I mean, you could, if you feel that you're mistreated in the VA, if you feel that there was just an instance where a woman was sexually harassed by, I think it was a vendor in the Washington, D.C. VA, and she, could go to the Office of the Inspector General, she could demand an inspection. Wilkie actually attacked this woman for complaining. It's pretty amazing, the secretary. But if I'm, if I'm harassed or somebody makes a nasty remark to me in any of the private sector hospitals or doctor's offices that I go to, sure, I can complain, good luck. But no, if I were to call my congressperson about a bad experience I had in a private sector institution, they would just laugh. They have no control over that. And
Sure.
I think veterans really need to learn how to advocate for themselves without sort of storming off and saying, I'm never going to, go here again, because there's no perfect system.
Well, let me ask
and
this then. Why, if Wilkie is the head of the VA, why is he attacking it?
Well, because he knows, he has worked for very anti-government, senators and people on the Hill, and he is Trump's second choice, and he got the message when Secretary Shulkin was fired because he wasn't privatizing fast enough, that if you want to stay in this job, and I think he's very ambitious and he'd probably like to be in an even bigger job, you're not gonna contradict your boss, and your boss has made it clear that he wants to privatize the VA. He wants 90% of veterans to get their care in the private sector, and he's doing his job.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
okay.
Well, so much again, just
Yeah, go right ahead.
again, Cliff.
Yeah, sure.
Is that what there are 150 VA hospitals, and some hospitals, always problems in any hospital, and the VA system's not perfect either. And I'm not arguing that any hospital has problems. However, what the opponents of the VA trying to do is talk about any time there's any incident anywhere of those 150 hospitals, they blow it up, and much of the media goes along with this kind of reporting to suggest that all VA hospitals are if something happens in Chicago, somebody's treated inappropriately, and that shouldn't happen, and we certainly would oppose that. It should be reported. We're all for open transparency, and the VA is the one system in the country that really has more open transparency than any other system anywhere. But if it happens at the VA, they publish it all over the country, and many people are therefore concluding that the whole system is broken. And again, the opponents of the VA try to magnify these little mistakes and make them suggest that the whole system is broken. But we know that's not true. You mentioned earlier, most people are very happy with what they get at the VA. So we've got to, again, go out, veterans have to go out and speak, truth to power, that this is a system that we want to make sure is not undermined, in fact, has all the money it needs to care for our veterans, is in no way sending all these veterans outside to the private sector where care doesn't have as high a quality inside the VA, and people have to wait longer. And I would say that one thing, there are people sometimes who have to go outside the VA. But again, what they're trying to do, like say if you live upstate, somewhere in Chicago, downstate, where you might live in more rural areas where there are just not any VA doctors and people don't want to travel many miles. And we are fully supportive of people being able to do that. Veterans need to be able to have care that's nearby. But in general, if they have to go further away, the doctors are saying your care is going to be much better if you travel that distance and go to a VA hospital where the doctors are much more qualified than often in rural areas where people live that are veterans. So again, our thing is to strengthen the VA, keep the VA strong, and make sure veterans have that well into the future.
Yeah,
That is Skip Pelano.
Problem.
Suzanne, let me interrupt you, Suzanne. Sure. I'm sorry, we have a call. I want to make sure we take him. Let's go to Jay. Jay, hi. Thanks for calling. Jay, are you there? Jay on line 1, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. Go right ahead, Jay. Thank you.
Okay, hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I want to say, just like fraternities and sororities and various organizations around the country, and we do know that this is how this company, in America is a company, how this country operates. And we established that the VA and the veterans, how that can be a fraternity and a sorority that we should take serious, and we should make sure that everybody that is a veteran is taken care of as much as people, and we should be working toward making sure that they're taken care of as much as people that belong to other fraternities and organizations like that. And am I making sense? I'm trying to make sense. I
got you. Suzanne,
I'm working.
Yeah, okay. Suzanne, respond to Jay. You've written all about this.
Well, I think that, what's very special about the VA is that the Veterans Health Administration is that they understand specific veterans' illnesses. And when we were on the Hill last week, you know, there was an Iraq veteran. You know, there were Gulf War veterans, there were Vietnam veterans, there were people who hadn't been in combat, and they had, you know, a lot of issues around chronic pain.
No, my point is that the VA has helped me. They got me an apartment, and
Good.
I didn't realize how strong the VA is. I want people to understand that some of these other organizations, these fraternities, like the Masons and the Eastern Stars and these
I
college
understand
fraternities,
other organizations.
I want everybody to understand how strong and important the VA is.
Good.
They got me into an apartment, and it's working for me. I'm doing well at this moment. I still got some things I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Because the VA recognizes that as a veteran.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, they certainly do, without a doubt. Let's go to Robert on line
Jay,
2. Robert, how are you?
Hello, Chris. How you doing?
Fine. How are you, Robert?
Good. How you know me a little bit? Because I'm a blind veteran. I call you once in a while, Robert. Ian?
I'm sorry. I'm getting some feedback. Say that again, Robert.
I said I'm Robert, and I met you some time ago. I'm a blind veteran.
A blind veteran. Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I'm a member. I'm not a member. I'm a patient in and out of the VA Hines Blind Rehab Center in Hines out there. Is one of the best. I suggest all blind vets are going blind, go out there.
Wow, that's saying saying a lot.
I'm so glad you said that.
Absolutely.
In my book, Wounds of War, I talk about they have 13 blind rehab centers, and it is amazing because it's not just blindness, but, you know, vision impairment. And often if you go to someone in the private sector, they'll say, well, I'm sorry, there's not much we can do. But the VA has these blind rehab centers, and they're residential programs that, you know, you stay at for weeks and learn how to deal with your particular impairment, and they give you all kinds of equipment to take home with you. Did that happen with you, Robert?
Yes, ma'am. I have a computer. I have 2 iPhones. I have an 8 and an 11 almost, and we have a blind tea tournament which come off in September. We have fishing. We have everything come through the Hines VA Hospital, and they teach you mobile skills, individual living, everything out there. Braille, you name it. Work on air conditioners. Work on lawnmowers. It's blind for you. And Cliff, I can work on your car if you let me. I'm not driving, Cliff. It's a wonderful program on the why people beat it now. The 2 best I know is Hines Rehab out here at Hines, and then you got one in Augusta.
That's great.
I'm planning on going
and
back
why
again.
Is it? I want to know, and this is what veterans should be going to the Chicago Tribune and to the radio and television stations and asking them, Robert, have you ever been interviewed by the Chicago Tribune? Have you ever been interviewed on a radio station that isn't this program? Because they should be asking people like that about these facilities and these programs, and they are not.
Good point.
Well, you know, in a few more weeks, I'm coming back out to Hines for some more skills and guitar lessons, all that kind of stuff.
That's great.
And Cliff, I want to come down there to your program one Saturday.
You do that. Come down and play for us, will you?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Cliff, one more thing. We have a blind tea tournament, which is held in Riverside in over an hour. And it's about 400 disabled veterans, spinal cord playing golf, blind and spinal cord veterans. We have one where the blind veteran is 3 hole in 1. You have hit that.
That is great, Robert. Thank you. Thank you for all that good music, that good information. This is really something. Let's go to Tommy. Tommy, how you doing? Tommy?
Well, Cliff, let me say hey to you. It's always great to hear your voice and to your guests. So I want to ask both of you a question. When you put on the military uniform and you go over into hostile territory, the question I want to ask the both of you is, who are you going over there to fight for?
Well, you go over to fight for your country. Young man, 19 years old, went off to Vietnam, 50-some years ago, and then learned a lot of that war when I arrived there. So, again, it doesn't mean that the way I went was the way I came back.
Yeah, you also, I think I'm correct, you joined Vietnam Veterans Against the War, didn't you?
I did indeed.
Yeah, yeah, I thought
So,
you did.
again, I saw war, and I was very horrified by what I saw and saw that in many ways we were not fighting for something that I really believed in, and I had the right when I came back. I was still in the Army.
Yeah.
We started an underground newspaper to protest the war with our fellow soldiers. I mean, telling them what they were walking into when they went to Vietnam. And there were lots of people just like me
And you were
in the military.
You were in the 101st, right?
I was in the 101st, correct?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Right. Yeah, and going against it. There were a lot of veterans for peace. A whole lot of folks returned even to Nam on the 50th anniversary. You did that, didn't you?
I did indeed. And
Yeah,
I went back,
yeah.
and I was horrified to see in Vietnam that they are living the legacy of the war in the sense that Agent Orange still is a major problem for tens of thousands of people in Vietnam, and they still have unexploded ordnance. Something like 20% of all weapons or bombs we dropped didn't actually explode, and people there every day are getting blown up by them. So it's just horrifying for me to see that we've long forgotten it, but they there in Vietnam live it every day.
And the blue water, you got that also.
In the blue water vest.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I tell you, it's interesting what you folks are doing, and it is so important. Suzanne, I think it's great what you're doing, and and I think also you went to Congress and met with 25 members of the Committee on Veterans Affairs. That's wonderful, and sir, you keep doing the same thing, Skip. Okay.
Yes, and join us, brothers.
Right.
I mean, this is something we all have to stand up for. The forces of evil will take us down.
Yeah, I think that every veteran who uses the VA and likes the VA should call their congressperson and ask to speak to their congressperson or meet with a legislative aide, because people like Robert, need to tell their stories, because
that's right.
They're being drowned out by people who actually don't even use the VA and want to kill it. And
I want to thank you both. We're up against the clock. You're doing a great job. Thank you for spending some time with us. All right?
Take care.
You,
all right. And you too now.
Okay. Bye.